They're destroying themselves. Those are countries that are really destroying themselves. I hope they get back to fossil fuel, because right now, Chris, whether we like it or not, fossil fuel is the thing that works. And then you can add nuclear with it and other things, but fossil fuel is what works if we're going to fire up those big monster factories.
What we're stopping doing, and again with the support of Congress in the One Big Beautiful Bill, is ending the last 33 years of highly subsidized preferential treatment for certain forms of energy, and that energy, particularly wind and solar.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Clean Energy Edge. I'm Russ Bates, here with my co-host and Canadian colleague, Brian Scott. Brian, I'm glad you're here today. We got some nonsense to unpack. How are you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing just so good, Brian. I'm really excited about today's topic because, I mean, you just heard it. A clip of Trump taking aim at wind power. Our glorious Interior Secretary claiming that solar and wind get crazy tax incentives. Here's the thing. What they're saying isn't really true. And so today, let's talk about fossil fuels that have been on the government life support system for over a century. People don't really realize that. And then you add in the Big Billionaire Bill, that's just pumped billions more of our tax dollars into fossil fuels, and it's still cutting support for clean energy. So I hope you're ready. I brought some receipts. I want to break down the history and the hidden costs and really get into the numbers that the industry, fossil fuel industry, and its defenders, they don't really want you to hear. So I'm excited about that, Brian. What do you think?
Couldn't be more excited.
Well, before we dive in, we want to make sure everybody subscribes to this show on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen. Hit that subscribe button and help us support the channel. So let's get started here and kind of smash this myth. And I hear this all the time. I'm sure you hear it all the time, Brian. In fact, I know you do, that clean energy only survives because of subsidies. Otherwise, it's not going to make it. And let's make sure that we make sure folks understand that's just projection by those in the sector. So, Brian, did you know the fossil fuels have been on the government life support system for over 100 years? You aware of that?
I did. I'm not shocked by it.
Yeah. And those are things that people never really want to, in the fossil fuel sector, really talk about. You bring it up to them, and it's really brushed aside. And my suspicion is because it's been going on for many, many, many decades. Again, over 100 years. So you don't really think about it. It's just baked in.
It is. It's part of the system. It's part of our economy as a whole. I do have to say, where most major sectors have some sort of subsidy or incentive, but it really needs to be called out in energy, because it's often put on renewables, especially by the current administration in the U.S., of this perception that the only reason it exists is because of subsidies. And if you're going to say that, you got to call both sides of that coin, right? You have to call what's fair. And if you're only going to give subsidies to one side, then you have to admit that. But you can't give it to both sides and claim you're giving it to one. That's for sure.
Yeah, take away subsidies from all of them. That's totally fine by me. Level playing field. I mean, that's just not what we have. And so I brought the receipts. I thought we could kind of walk through these, Brian. And these are kind of broken into, we'll call them the direct subsidies or what have you, and then some of the more indirect that we don't see, but taxpayers are still on the hook for. IDC, Intangible Drilling Costs. Are you familiar with that?
I am.
Well, I was not, so that's something I had to look up. I know you've been in that the oil sector a bit and understood it more. I didn't, so I had to take a little bit of a deep dive. So IDCs, or Intangible Drilling Costs, I'm just going to read it, are expenses like labor, site prep, and materials that don't have a resale value after a well is drilled. So get this, since 1916, oil and gas companies have been allowed to write off 70 to 100% of those costs immediately. So they don't spread them out over time like normal businesses do. So in today's dollars, this one provision alone costs U.S. taxpayers roughly $4 billion with a B, $4 billion every year, and yet still in place today. That's quite a big deal. I don't see anything with clean energy getting any type of help like that.
It's there's different rules for both sides, but people don't like to. Like, I had this conversation with somebody in oil and gas not that long ago, and they said, well, it's, you know, it supports it, but it's not a subsidy. Like, they tried to word it in a way that it didn't qualify as a subsidy in their point. And what it comes down to is you can describe a subsidy any way you want. You can try and categorize things any way you want, but it's a financial incentive provided by the government to help the industry make money. It's that simple, right? There's nobody who can debate that. And if they didn't, excuse me, have that support, that de-risking element, it would reduce the amount of money being invested. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, it's whether you call it subsidy, tax incentives. I've heard people really want to get into the weeds and say, well, wait a minute. It's not a subsidy, it's a tax incentive, or it's not a tax incentive, it's government help. Well, that's what we're talking about, right? Is government help, somebody else's dollars coming in to help that business. Let's look at another one here, percentage depletion. You familiar with that one?
That one I'm not.
Well, me either. And it's really old, since 1926. It's a permanent carve out. So let me read this. The percentage depletion allowance has been in place since 1926. It lets oil and gas producers deduct 15% of the gross revenue from a well. So that's from the gross revenue, even after they've already recovered their drilling cost. So in other words, it's a permanent tax break that keeps lowering their taxable income long after the well's paid for itself. And no other industry gets that. That sounds like a pretty good deal if you're able to deduct 15% from your gross revenue after you've already got everything else paid for.
Yeah, that's a great deal.
My gosh. Now, here's another one. Accelerated depreciation. We're familiar with that, right? So it lets oil and gas companies and other industries, I mean, this is something that a lot of folks get, kind of take care of their heavy capital investments. So in oil and gas, it lets them write off the cost of pipelines, refineries, and other infrastructure faster than they actually wear out. So accelerating the depreciation amount. Let's see, that means they reduce their taxable income more quickly in the early years of an asset's life, which lowers their tax bills. Also says, while accelerated depreciation exists in other industries, fossil fuels benefit disproportionately because of the sheer scale of their infrastructure and the constant build-out of wells, pipelines, and facilities. I mean, yeah, they are building a lot. I get that, and
Sure.
And that depreciation of those assets, sure, and that accelerated depreciation. So that's another one that a lot of other industries get and can take advantage of. It's disproportionately helping them because of so much build out that they do. That's just kind of the nature of their beast. But that's another one, accelerated depreciation. Any thoughts on that one?
It's like you say, it's a similar formula that's used in a lot of different industries in a lot of different ways, but it's one that they don't like to talk. They like to pretend like it doesn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't want to talk about that either. Here's one. So you remember we opened this segment with Trump going off against wind, and federal lands is something that he's pushing back on. I'm assuming that they're saying that the offshore wind project a couple weeks ago that's about 80% done, and they said, oh, full stop, hold on. Is that federal land since it's out in the ocean there? I guess. So they've attacked that piece of it, but keep this in mind: federal leasing for oil and gas, they got a pretty good deal here. So let's read this. Oil, gas, and coal companies they lease federal lands at below market rates, typically 12.5% royalty onshore, 18.75% offshore. So I'm going to say offshore, that's similar to the wind farm. So offshore drilling rigs and such. And that's far less than what private landowners charge. Now, we're going to talk about the Big Billionaire Bill here in a minute as something else, but they made it even worse, reopening non-competitive leasing. So that basically lets these companies grab drilling rights with minimal bids. So instead of bidding, multiple people bidding for this, there's just a few. So your odds go up that you're going to be able to get that.
Sure.
According to government estimates, this giveaway will cost taxpayers around $6 billion over the next decade. $6 billion over 10 years. So that's what, $600 million a year. Yeah, that's a pretty good deal if you're in that oil and gas, fossil fuel industry, huh?
Yeah. It's there's a lot of good deals out there, isn't there, for oil and gas right now?
Yeah, I mean,
Or maybe always.
Well, yeah, these are things that have been going on for 100 years, right? One of these was 1926. We're almost 2026. We're just right there, 100 years. So these aren't relics. They're active, ongoing government support. So, I mean, I'm looking at these stats here. I mean, it really what comes down to on these direct government help, subsidies, incentives, whatever you want to call them. Effectively, Brian, you and I, well, you're in Canada, but folks here in the U.S., we're investors really in every well that's drilled in the country. We just don't get the dividends, right?
Right.
They're getting it all. So just on the direct stuff, I mean, what's your thought on just the overall stuff? These are just a few of them, but wow, those are some pretty big hitters.
I mean, they're definitely set up there in a way that it's pretty clear that the government wants the oil and gas industry to exist, right? And maybe you could make the argument that for the last 100 years, it's been vital. It's been needed. It's where would any major country be without its energy sector, right? But as we know, there's increasing demand. There's increasing desire for how would I say it? Less connected loads, stuff like that. It's pretty obvious that clean energy has a massive advantage, and decentralization is more so what I should refer to. When we have to expand these grids, just adding more and more fossil fuels isn't solving that problem. We know that when we build out an asset like solar or wind, its cost to operate is so little, right? When we see China, massive development of solar, wind, batteries, they're reducing their costs going forward. We know that it's reducing our competitive nature with them, and it's a flawed process to lean too heavily on that side, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100% agree. And let's talk some about the indirect subsidies. So the stuff that they're not necessarily getting money handed over or tax incentives or whatever, but we'll call them these hidden costs. There's a military cost, right? So what do I mean by that? Let me just read the quote. Our military here in the U.S. spends about $81 billion a year securing oil routes. So that's about $11 per barrel. So we pay that whether we're using that oil, whether we're driving or not, right? So you think about the Houthi thing a few months ago.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure. So somebody can fact check me, obviously, but I don't know that has been secured yet, where you're seeing tankers go through that. I think they just hadn't, attacked the Houthis and had a big celebration. Of course, they let everybody on Signal who was on that chat know. Totally different story. But they really didn't secure that route. And I think that was like $1 billion. I don't know. I've heard like $1 billion or $5 billion, whatever the number is. but $81 billion a year just to secure these routes. I mean, that's a big amount. I had no clue about that until I started looking into this stuff.
And I guess the real question is, you talk about like $11 a barrel. Is that on exports? Because I mean, the U.S. and Canada combined don't really consume a ton of oil and gas that they don't produce themselves. They do consume some, but not a ton. So it's almost like it's money being subsidized to the industry to be able to export to other countries, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I guess either way, it's helping that bottom line of these oil and gas companies. And I don't know. I don't know where their profits are, but it seems like every time you turn around, you're hearing record profits from, a BP or an Exxon or Shell or any of these companies. That's just one piece of it. Then you've also got, let's call it unpriced externalities. So the health problems. Let me read this quote. The costs that we never see on our bills, $649 billion a year in health problems, extreme weather damage, and climate-related cost. So, that's not really free market. Those are hard to categorize. And a lot of people say, oh, whatever, how do you make those connections? Well, it's pretty easy to make those connections. I mean, the professionals, the scientists have all done that. But $649 billion a year, I mean, you don't see that from solar. You don't see that from batteries or wind. Not that there's not some problems with that too. We're not saying that, but we are saying there's no $650 billion a year in health problems you're getting from clean energy.
It's kind of beyond debate, right? Like a lot of facts and figures you hear about in different areas where there is a lot of fossil fuel production and whatnot, health rates are never better, right? Like that's just not going to be a thing. The idea that it's not costing money in impacts on groundwater, on health, on a whole variety of things, right? We know pollution. We don't have to get into a climate change discussion to talk about the impacts of pollution, right? You don't have to believe in climate change to believe that, pollution's not good for us. We know that. That's pretty right. I saw a lot of Republican members that are not big climate change pushers pushing pretty heavily back on Canada this year about forest fires and the smog that it was impacting their states. And I get it. Nobody wants smog, or smoke or whatever you want to call it. But if you're saying that's bad for you, you have to understand that all smoke, all smog, everything you're inhaling is bad for you, and you should inherently be looking to stop it.
Yeah. Yeah, you make a great point. There's polluting, as in, things that are just going to hurt the environment, this and that. Then there's climate change, which you're right. I mean, people may not believe in climate change, but climate change believes in them. So you don't have to believe in gravity either. But it's there. And then there's these like liability caps. So you remember Deepwater Horizon, how they made a movie about it with Mark Wahlberg. Do you remember that? The big oil spill. I mean, it was just a disaster. But when you have these big spills that happen, I'll just read this. The law caps what companies pay. Taxpayers pick up the rest. So when you have a cap, and this is saying the cap is $134 million. So 134 million sounds like a pretty big number, right? I mean, when I first saw that, I'm like, all right, 134 million, they're on the hook for that. Okay, that's a lot. Until you see what an episode like the Deepwater Horizon, it cost $65 billion. BP paid, 134 million of that. Okay, they paid 134 million, but it cost 65 billion. So you have a cap on those types of things, which, there's so much evidence of whenever you do have a problem like this, that it's terrible. Meanwhile, you have Trump saying, oh, the whales are going crazy and beaching themselves. And it's killing birds and things like that. Well, house cats and windows are killing more birds than wind, for example, right? You have an episode like a Deepwater Horizon or some of these other catastrophes that have happened. That's a big deal, and they're capped. How can you have a law where you're capped at how much you can pay when you screw something up?
It's true. It's true. I mean, we've seen Trump kind of come up with some of these borderline, I don't know, anti-capitalist rules lately with, like businesses like, I'm struggling to remember the AI chip maker, NVIDIA, where, chips get sold to China and they make a share and all that. Kind of the premise of, if the U.S. is going to support an industry, then they need to get money back later for it, is kind of how he's selling it. It kind of feels like, maybe that should have happened with Deepwater. I said, maybe the U.S. should just own BP. I don't know. It's the amount of money it costs the taxpayer. And it was kind of like, well, we can't charge them more than this, to your point. Like, if a company's going to cost the taxpayers that much money, should they still exist? Should they still be allowed to operate within, the U.S. border?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just not for that at all. Especially when they've got the bottom lines that they've got and these record profits that you continually hear about. So let's compare clean versus fossil as far as the comparison. So let's just look at the first 15 years of let's call it government help. Again, I'm going to the receipts here. In their first 15 years, and this is in today's dollars, Brian, so we understand, because this has been around for 100 plus years. But in their first 15 years, oil and gas got about $2.5 billion a year. That's in today's dollars. Nuclear, it got around $4.5 billion. That's right, per year in today's dollars. Renewables here in the U.S., what do you think they got? First 15 years per year.
First 15 years, I'm betting it was about 1% of that.
No, it's a little more, 5 to 10 times less, but $600 million.
$600 million. Yeah.
So you got legacy sectors, oil and gas, $2.5 billion a year in their first 15. Renewables, $600 million, right? 5 to 10 times less. The 10 times is when we're talking that $4.5 billion for nuclear. Okay. So in the numbers I got, this is as far back as I could get. Since 1950, taxpayers have provided about $846 billion for fossil fuels and roughly $200 billion for non-hydro renewables. So that's a 4-to-1 advantage of fossil fuels.
Right.
But that gap grows, right? So renewables from a Big Billionaire Bill, chopped, kneecapped, it's done. Meanwhile, for fossil fuels, it was at this, and the Big Billionaire Bill came in, and it went to that. That's just doubling down on old technology. That's not a good idea.
I don't know that. I don't know how many people really don't know this. Like, I don't know if we're at that point, like whether there's enough misinformation out there that there's a lot of people that just believe that that's how renewables survive and oil and gas has it rough, or whether we're just at this point where Trump feels like if I just say something, it's true enough. And the people that support me will say it's true enough because it's what we support, whether it's right or wrong or true. I don't know. Right. I really don't know.
It's driven in my mind, Brian, by emotion, and people have had generations of families working in like coal mines and oil and gas, the fossil fuels. So it's part of their lives.
Sure.
I get it. I totally understand. My family spent a lot of time working in coal mines. I had a great grandfather, a grandfather. I've got a good friend who still works in the coal mines, to this day. I understand it and makes a good living. That's really not where we're at, nor is it where we should be going. That's something they don't do. So let me hit a little bit on the Big Billionaire Bill, or I also like to call it the big betrayal bill, right? So they've really doubled down on fossil fuels. Of course, you heard Trump in the beginning and the Interior Secretary. They're echoing what this is. So what did the bill do with regards to clean energy and fossil fuels? It added $70 billion in brand new subsidies for fossil fuels. $70 billion in new subsidies for fossil fuels. It reduced royalty rates and reintroduced cheap, non-competitive leases. It protected and expanded nuclear incentives, so that's something else that we could get into. And it slashed the clean energy timelines for solar, for wind, for EVs, even hydrogen. So, I mean, really, the field, there's not a level playing field. There's no balance here. It's definitely tilted very hard. And we haven't even talked about the executive orders that Trump's issued since this was passed. What they've done as far as like the EPA pulling back the Solar for All grants that had demonstrated, they'd already done the research, the grants were awarded, had a return on investment already there. They clawed that money back. So that was $7 billion. Drop in the bucket when we're looking at what these guys get. But that really hurts these lower income families, the Solar for All program. So it's tilted it even further in favor of these industries that already have a century long head start.
Right. It's true. It's true. I don't see it changing under this administration. Like, I don't know.
Oh,
The midterms are, you know, I would have thought they'd be kind of obvious because midterms typically shift power back in American politics, especially controversial policies. I don't know. I don't know. I see unpopularity, but I also see a lot of passion, like you mentioned, on the right for what's going on. There's redistricting, gerrymandering, all this sort of stuff happening.
Yeah.
If the Republicans hold the House and don't lose out in the midterms, this is going to be 4 years of this and make it worse and worse and worse and harder to come back from.
Yeah, the damage is kind of, I mean, it's going to be hard to recover from all of this. Again, I've got a lot of faith that people are starting to wake up. I'm seeing that. These independents, these swing voters that helped propel Trump. Again, Trump only won by 2.5 million people. It was 77.5 million to 75 million. So 2.5 million. To me, he's already alienated, pissed off. He's disenfranchised, however you want to put it. I'm going to say at least that much, probably way, way more.
I would think so.
What I'm seeing. So what does that mean? I don't know, but you're right. We've got China that they're not doubling down on coal plants or fossil fuels. Are they using fossil fuels? Yeah, they sure are, but they're not moving closer towards them. They're still building stuff, but that's less and less, and they've got a pretty robust growth.
Yeah, and their emissions are dropping, right? Their emissions are dropping while the U.S. and Canada's are rising. That's the truth of it.
Yeah, I mean they're leaving us behind. They're going to be the leaders. Europe, they're trying to do their thing too, but I mean really it's not going to be the U.S. that is the leader. This isn't going to be where people think, oh, innovation and the land of opportunity. It's going to be, yeah, they still burn things. They still like fire, right? Just primitive caveman.
I don't like to doubt the U.S. economy and its like drive to get things done. I really don't, because through history, it's been remarkable. It has that entrepreneurial spirit to solve problems, and I think that's something locally we have here in Alberta, that there's a lot of passion for that. But it's going to take a big shift. It's going to take a big shift. It's, sometimes we swing too far right or left and we swing backwards. That's what happens. But it's going to take a big shift, and it's going to take a desire to do things with a lot less bureaucracy to overcome the losses. And that's difficult.
Yeah. And I guess when you kind of break everything down and get to the bullet points, I mean, every gallon of gas is subsidized. You just don't see the bill. It's hidden in your taxes.
Sure.
If fossil fuels had to pay their full cost, the drilling, pollution, the military security that we were talking about, they'd be anything but cheap. And right now, even with that, they're still not cheaper than clean energy. And clean energy has not been coddled. It was, no longer is, but was getting just a fraction of what fossil fuels have enjoyed for many, many, many generations. So, I mean, think about that.
Yeah, and that was too much, right? And you have certain key players that want to put kind of renewables out of their misery. You look at your energy secretary, Chris Wright. I mean, some of the claims he's making online about if you covered every inch of the planet with solar, it would only produce 20% of the power. Like, just the math is so far from correct on most things he says, but he's just a lightning rod and he knows it.
Yeah, he does. It's like the EPA secretary. He was asked the other day, well, do you think clean energy has a place in the economy and in the US? And this guy, I'm not kidding, Brian, this is what he said. I think whatever President Trump thinks, all right, well, this guy can't think for himself. We got it. You're a yes man.
And that might be the smartest thing he said, because it's so hard to have an opinion and have it match Trump's, because Trump speaks so incoherently on so many of these topics that are science or math or technology based, that if you put together a well thought out argument, even if it's for something you don't believe, it's going to be hard to align that with Trump.
Yeah, because he's all over the place. Yeah. That's another episode. But I mean, I think what it comes down to is the next time someone says renewables are only able to pencil out because of government help, I mean, you'll know the facts. These are facts. We brought the receipts. We've got all the data points for that. Happy to share that if somebody wants to inquire. But I mean, I encourage people, just do the research yourself. Google's a great tool. Just look it up and you'll be able to find that. It's out there. So, I mean, I think that's a good place to close out. Brian, what's your thoughts?
I think that's the best place to leave it. I think the facts are the facts, and that's all that they are. I shouldn't say that's all that they are. That's what they are. If somebody doesn't want to acknowledge realities, there's not much you can do, but you can lay out stuff like this to have that conversation for sure.
Agreed. Well, hey, if you've made it this far and you haven't already subscribed, do it on your favorite platform. Again, YouTube, we love that. But we're on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, all of that. And share this episode with someone who still believes the myth. And let's just keep pushing for energy that makes sense, that it's cleaner and it's part of the future, built on really reality and not just, false talking points. So thanks again, everybody. We appreciate it. We'll catch you next time.